the pipe dream isn't the capacity building program. That's being delivered. The pipe dream is governance. That's the pipe dream. Once we have something to govern, then of course capacity building programs can be effective, but you have to have the conditions in place. And you have, more than anything else, have to have legitimate governance.
Could we just begin with the British support team? Who are they? Because they're not much talked about, this team, or particularly sort of widely known. Who are they, and what do they do?
Well, the only thing I know about them is because they, about 6-7 years ago, they advertised a job and I applied for it. And the support team was being run by a brigadier who was a colleague of mine from Staff College. So that's when I first realized that there was something there. It's a very small team from what I gather. And what they do is what we have done in the past, what I was involved with in Iraq, and that is what we call governance capacity building. So ministries, from everything from agriculture to the Ministry of Defense, we provide whatever assistance we can in terms of advisors, in terms of training, to build up the capacity of those organizations. So that, I think, is the remit. There's a modest amount of money as far as I know. And of course, this is not just a UK program. It's, I believe, a program that Canada and at least one other country is involved in. So, but as you say, it's not well known because it's relatively small in terms of profile, also in terms of impact. But I think it's just one of those things that governments feel that they can point to when people say you're not doing anything about Palestine.
Right. And do you know what kind of role, if any, they have played in the conflict so far?
None. They wouldn't have played any role in the conflict. But the question, I think, is a very interesting one. If we say, what benefit has there been of that team in terms of the current conflict? Well, you can judge it by the fact that the Palestinian Authority, which Mr. Shapps thinks should be taking over Gaza, the Palestinian Authority has not been able to prevent the deaths of over 250, I think, civilians at the hands of the Israeli armed forces, police, and so on, since the 7th of October. They've not been able to do anything to prevent the arrests of over 4,000 people since the 7th of October. So what we have in the form of a Palestinian Authority is a very reluctant agent for the Israeli government, certainly its security arm. They're just totally helpless in terms of providing any level of security, any level of protection for human rights for their people. And that's one of the reasons why the Palestinian Authority was not successful in Gaza, because despite the fact that it's full of very nice people who want nice things, they have been effectively neutered by the Israeli government, who have absolute control over that territory. So when we talk about governance capacity building, the question should be governance of what? The Palestinians don't have any capability or any ability to govern. They administer certain things at the behest, often at the sort of limits that Israel puts on them, and they're constantly being frustrated, even in those areas, by whatever the Israeli government and now increasingly the settlers on the West Bank are doing to frustrate them. So I think that's the issue, really, is governance of what? Don't even think about governance capacity building until you can provide a solution where the Palestinian people are able to govern themselves.
Right. Okay. So if we consider that Benjamin Netanyahu himself has said that he wants Israel to retain security control over Gaza, Grant Shapps points at this Palestinian Authority as being a solution to a sort of post-conflict position that Gaza can find itself in. Do you agree then, given the complexity of all of that you've outlined brilliantly, with some analysts who say that it's a pipe dream?
Yes, the pipe dream isn't the capacity building program. that's being delivered. The pipe dream is governance. That's the pipe dream. Once we have something to govern, then of course capacity building programs can be effective, but you have to have the conditions in place. And you have, more than anything else, have to have legitimate governance. Now, in Iraq and Afghanistan, because the governments that we helped to put in place, the West helped to put in place, weren't truly seen as legitimate, all of the investment, and it was in the millions, hundreds of millions of pounds or dollars that were invested in capacity building, and I was involved in quite a lot of it myself in Iraq and in Afghanistan. I was primarily involved directly on the security side, policing and justice sector and so on. But I was monitoring the whole gambit on behalf of the military in Iraq. None of it really has borne any significant fruit, and all of these projects have been shrouded in failure. And it's failure because politicians love to have these very simple, relatively inexpensive projects so they can wave at people to say, look, this is what we're doing. What they're not thinking about is the strategic level policy that they need to deliver to enable benefits from these things. They just don't think about it. And it's a pipe dream to think that Prime Minister Netanyahu will get his wish that, Gaza will suddenly be pacified and Israel will resume control over it as it has in the past. I think one of the things that we can probably with a high level of certainty say, there is not going to be business as usual after whatever way this thing comes to some form of an end. The world has moved on. Unfortunately, in Western capitals, thinking has ossified. The world, the vast majority of the world, excluding just a few nations in the Western world, have decided that this is something that they are no longer going to tolerate, that a change must come. And the question really is how it comes and how painful it is to bring about change. But nobody in their right mind can imagine that somehow we will go back to something which approximates the situation before October of this year.